think creativity is absolutely essential to not only to connections within the company, but to growth. If you're not creative, then essentially you get stuck.
What inspired you to launch your blog, Babes About Town?
So Babes About Town came about, the inkling of the idea came about when I had my first son. And I had been living in Lagos, and before then I'd been living in New York, and then I moved to London and I had a baby, and then I was like, I have no idea what I can do with a baby. Can I go to a restaurant? Will I ever go to the cinema again? So I just felt really kind of isolated and adrift. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool if there was a website that told me, what I could do with a baby, like fun things for me as well as for my kid. But I didn't start the blog until my youngest was about to turn 1. And I was like, okay, I've been sitting on this idea for years. I've just got to do it. So I launched Babes About Town, which was, the idea was to have parent-friendly things for families who want to do cool things in the city, whether that's London or elsewhere. And yeah, that's the story of Babes About Town.
Your mission is to help people raise their game. What are your top 3 tips for unleashing your potential?
Yes, so when I say raise your game, I'm really talking about living a more creative, playful, and purposeful life. So I would say my tip number 1 would be stay curious, because curiosity is absolutely essential to a creative life. Tip number 2 would be go outside your comfort zone or expand your comfort zone. So we talk a lot about comfort zones, and it's always like you got to go outside it. Well, sometimes just expand the borders of your comfort a little bit, because that's where the exciting stuff happens. And tip number 3 would be to have a game plan, which means be intentional. But at the same time, know that you can change your plan, because that's what happens in a game. You adjust to what's going on. So yeah.
You urge people to have open, meaningful conversations with their children about race. Why is it important to talk to young people about this topic?
Yeah, there's nothing more important than transforming the way we talk to our kids about race, because our kids are the ones who are going to change the world. When we talk about changing the world, it really starts at home, and it starts with the youngest people in your life, who are going to be the ones who lead us forwards, the next generation. So I think it's essential that we as a society, but especially as families at home or in schools, begin to normalize conversations around race, so that our kids develop a language and a literacy around race and are able to engage with each other in just a more open and conscious way.
What does workplace inclusion and equality mean to you?
So it always comes down to stories again for me. As a storyteller, I'm always thinking about what kind of stories we tell about ourselves and what stories we see in the world around us. So I think it's really important for any business or any workplace to ask themselves, what is our story? What kind of story are we trying to tell about ourselves? How do we resonate with the community around us? And, whose voice is missing from the story? Is everybody who needs to have a voice represented in the story? Does our story reflect the people that we're trying to reach? So I think if you ask yourself these questions and really think honestly and authentically about, so what are the gaps in our story and how can we fill this, then it's a way for you to have more open and honest conversations about, okay, who gets to have a voice? Who gets to have a say, who gets a seat at the table. And that's a really essential way for businesses to tell their stories going forwards.
Why should businesses foster a creative workplace culture?
I think creativity is absolutely essential to not only to connections within the company, but to growth. If you're not creative, then essentially you get stuck. you run out of ideas, you will get left behind, you will create a really sort of stagnant culture where the people who work for you lose interest in what they're doing. So I think, fostering creativity as part of your workplace culture is the only way to really keep pushing forwards, keep trying new things, and also open more opportunities for people to feel more included and for different voices, people from different backgrounds and different orientations to feel like their voices and their needs are being heard and are being met.